To all you sports fans, did you know you can stream this podcast on Spotify right now? It's easy. Open the app on your mobile device or desktop, click on the Browse channel, then click on the podcast section. You can also stream on your smart speaker. Now, it's that much easier for you to stay up to date on all the latest and greatest in all things sports, thanks to Spotify.
We here at the Kings recognize that we have a big platform. It's a privilege, but it's also a responsibility.
Texans owner Bob McNair, quote, "We respect our country, respect our flag."
It's a special moment to see how powerful the youth are right now.
We get back to football. This is bigger than basketball.
How about this? Loyola Chicago is off to the Final Four.
I called it. You can ask any of my friends. I predicted this.
25 Sister Jean t-shirts, another bobblehead.
I'm so happy for Loyola, for the city of Chicago, and for the nation. Cheerful San Antonio. The Ramblers are on their way.
What you see may change your perception of any sporting event. Get this, shoot this.
Welcome to Outside the Lines. I'm Bob Lee. Could there be a clearer contrast between the images of the NFL and the NBA and their respective attitudes on social activism? That's today's big story on the final Monday in March from Studio Z. While an NFL owner who once joked about players as the inmates running the prison defends a fellow owner selling his team over inappropriate workplace behavior, the NBA closes ranks around gun violence nationally and a police shooting in Sacramento. Warning, this video may be disturbing.
Show me your hands! Gun! 5-7 shots fired. Subject down.
The fatal police shooting 8 days ago of Stephon Clark led to a protest march Thursday, which culminated at the arena of the Sacramento Kings. That impacted the size of the crowd and the game start time, but more importantly, sparking this real-time reaction from the owner of that franchise, Vivek Ranadive.
We here at the Kings recognize that we have a big platform. It's a privilege, but it's also a responsibility.
Less than 2 days later, nearly 1,000 marches mobilized around the world in the wake of the Parkland, Florida school shooting, with most of the attention on several 100,000 assembling in the nation's capital. Called to a remarkable speech and moment of silence, 6 minutes, 20 seconds in length, the duration of the attack, which saw 17 students and staff killed. Across the spectrum of sports, but especially in the NBA, support for the march was visible. The Miami Heat's Dwayne Wade, who had visited Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in the wake of the shooting, showed his support for Saturday's march on social media. The NBA player most identified with social activism dating back 60 years, Bill Russell, he did the same. The Thunder's Carmelo Anthony teamed up with MTV and the NAACP to assist in busing 4,500 youngsters from his hometown of Baltimore to Washington, D.C. The Sixers' Ben Simmons warmed up with a show of support for the rally. Spurs head coach Greg Popovich spent 3 full minutes of his pregame chat with reporters yesterday, praising the young people who organized and participated in the gun violence marches, while criticizing President Trump for not attending. Last night in Sacramento, not only were the Celtics and the Kings players wearing shirts in their pregame warm-ups, remembering Stephon Clark, who was shot to death by police 1 week ago, but between Thursday night's march and the Celtics' arrival in Sacramento for last night's game, the two franchises teamed for a statement on the emotional issues reignited by Clark's shooting.
We will not stick to sports.
We will not shut up and dribble.
This is bigger than basketball.
Change can be uncomfortable.
Change is necessary.
We need to talk.
We need to act.
We matter.
We must unite.
Say his name.
Stephon Clark.
Stephon Clark. We must unite.
While that was going down in Sacramento, across the country in Orlando, NFL owners were gathering for their meetings where the redefined catch rule was probably going to make the most news until Houston Texans owner Bob McNair spoke with reporters last night. McNair, remember, last fall, in a meeting that did not include NFL players, was reported by Outside the Lines' Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham to have said regarding player protests during the national anthem, quote, "We can't have the inmates running the prison," end quote. McNair apologized for his comments, saying it was a figure of speech. McNair last night defended outgoing Carolina Panthers owner Jerry Richardson, who has put his club up for sale after he was reported to be guilty of sexual harassment and uttering a racial slur in his role as Panthers owner. Quote, some of the comments he might have made could have been made jokingly and misunderstood. I'm sure he didn't mean to offend anybody. Sometimes people choose to try to make something go away rather than fighting it. I think his regret is he didn't fight some of these things. And McNair also discussed the on-field protest and gestures by NFL players during the national anthem last year, a practice that by season's end was not seen quite so often. Quote, there are fans that are upset about it, he said. Fans are our customers. You can replace the owners and the league would survive. You can replace the players, although the game won't be good. You can't replace the fans. If you don't have the fans, you're dead. Now, contrast that with yesterday's statement from Jets CEO Christopher Johnson speaking to the national anthem issue and the possibility of compelling NFL players to stand. Quote, I can't speak to how other people run their teams, but I just think that trying to forcibly get the players to shut up is a fantastically bad idea. Jason Reed of The Undefeated is reporting from the NFL owners' meetings in Orlando. He joins us today, and Marcos Bertone's column is always a must-read in the Sacramento Bee. It's good to have both of you gentlemen here. Jason, what did you make of Bob McNair's comments, which took the catch rule, blew that off the front page, and has him out there on several issues at once, Richardson and, of course, the national anthem?
Well, Bob, I wasn't surprised by his comments on either issue. We've seen what Bob McNair has said in the past. We know where he stands. And even in the most generous interpretation, his comments are just wildly out of touch. You know, he talked about the anthem protest and about the fact that, you know, the owners want to show the players that we have to, believe in this country and support this country and support our institutions. Wherever you come down on whether or not the players protested in the right form using the national anthem to do what they did, they have made it clear repeatedly that they were not protesting against the military. They were not protesting against the police. What they were doing was trying to shine a light on racial injustice. Again, wherever you come down on it, don't put words in their mouths, and that's what he's doing. And as far as the Richardson stuff goes, I mean, Bob, you're talking about a situation where his comments, and by him I'm talking about Bob McNair, they just seem so ridiculous. Like, in this environment, to say that, well, he might have just been joking, I don't know how that's helpful to the situation we're in right now.
And getting back to the whole issue of pregame protests and gestures by the players, the irony, the supreme irony, is that this is on the agenda, the $90 million package, the Players Coalition agreement with Roger Goodell and the owners for social initiatives. And it's up for a vote.
Yeah, it's up for a vote here at these meetings, and there's the $73 million portion of it. That, what league sources have told us, has already been agreed to, but it's the rest of the money that has to be voted on. And we're at a time right now where you got to think Goodell doesn't really need this. McNair's comments were not helpful to trying to move forward this vote. So, you know, for him to say what he said on the first day of the meetings, clearly Goodell has a lot of issues he's dealing with. And having Bob McNair say that is not another one he needed to contend with right now.
Then you got the job market. You got Eric Reed saying, I'm not going to kneel anymore. You've got several players saying from the Players Coalition that Reed's unemployment and free agency currently is affected by that. You've got Colin Kaepernick working out with no apparent interest. You've got Johnny Manziel throwing to some wideouts at a pro day with all sorts of interest there. And everyone's saying, what you've got a quarterback washed out of the league, and you've got a quarterback who took two teams deep into the postseason, and ascribing why one has interest and one does not.
Yeah, and Bob, let's look at the Eric Reed situation first. I think it's way too early to say that Eric Reed's protest and what he did and how closely he was aligned with Colin Kaepernick is the reason he doesn't have a job. I think he will get offers. The safety market right now, I mean, it's not like people are coming after safeties early in free agency. So I think he will get a job. If we're 2-3 months down the line and he still doesn't have a job, well, then I think we can talk about that. As far as the Kaepernick situation and Johnny Manziel, yes, there were a lot of teams. I believe 13 teams came out to see Manziel throw. it's a different situation. Kaepernick is looked at as a guy right now, and I don't know moving forward if this will change, who is just not wanted in the NFL. That's wrong. I'm not saying that's right, but it's a situation where he's suing the league. Now he has this grievance. Then we know that they didn't want him before. The owners were not attracted to him. They didn't want their teams going after him before the grievance, and that just makes it a more difficult situation. So yes, Manziel is a guy who did wash out, but you know how it is, Bob. Teams will always give a guy a chance if they think he can play. The difference with the Kaepernick thing is a lot of activists and a lot of players believe he has been blackballed.
There's baggage there in the minds of many. I'll be back with you in just a second. Marcos, I'm always leery to ask people what the mood of a city is because there are as many moods as there are people. Sacramento's no different. But what is the city like after that scene outside the Kings Arena and, of course, the bigger issue, the fatal police shooting? What's it like on this Monday?
I think the city is weary, Bob. The city is hurting. And the city's feeling fortunate right now that nothing really terrible happened during the demonstrations. And I think part of the reason that nothing terrible happened is directly related to the way the NBA and the Sacramento Kings responded to an attempt to shut down a game. Only roughly 2,400 people were able to get into the arena before the doors were locked for the safety of all concerned. And the fact that Sacramento police should be commended for not sparking a confrontation with protesters who were very emotional in that moment, and that the NBA and the Kings had the foresight to decide to play the game but to lock the doors to make sure that no one got hurt. And then the evening was capped off by some very commendable comments that the Kings owner Vivek Ranadive made. I think those wise actions went a long way toward averting a terrible situation and maintaining a peace that we hope endures here in Sacramento.
Marcus, what I alluded to at the top of the show, I found rather impressive in short order. And it's not slick, but it's effective. The joint effort by the Celtics and the Kings players to put a PSA or political statement or whatever, the viral statement about this, it was powerful and done quickly.
It was done very quickly, and people responded in real time to this. And it was a very eerie situation driving home from work that night and listening to the game. It sounded like Gary Gerald, the Kings radio announcer, was in the arena by himself. So the Kings lost because they refunded the gate to people who didn't arrive. So they lost most of the gate, and yet the owner, Ranadive, responded with just the right statement to make, and then the videotape was very powerful, and the fact that it was aired on the Jumbotron of the arena before the game, I think really speaks well of the NBA and draws a big contrast with what's going on with the NFL right now.
Let's talk about that contrast, Jason. We do want to point out that Robert Kraft, owner of the Patriots, lent one of his private full-scale jets to folks in Parkland. And in fact, as everyone took off, there was a private note from Robert Kraft on every seat. There was a hat. But you've got, at the same time that's going down, you've got McNair basically establishing the headlines. The perception of the NFL here is about to vote on the completion of the social initiative package up against that of the NBA.
Well, Bob, the perception is that the NBA is a much more progressive league. We've seen that although the ironic thing is that in the NBA there is a rule that specifically says players have to stand. In the game operations manual in the NFL, it doesn't say players that have to stand. They have to be on the sideline. Now, that could be changed, and I think it will be changed. But you see the NBA, and the perception nationally is that it is progressive, that the owners have a better understanding of social issues, and that although players are not allowed to kneel during the anthem, players have maximized their platform off the field, and owners seem to be more supportive of that. So the perception is that there are many owners in the NFL who simply don't get it, and there are owners in the NBA who do get it.
Yeah, and back and forth the images collide. Jason Reed, Marcos Bertone, gentlemen, so much to talk about. Wish we had more time. Appreciate you being here today. Thank you. Next up, the ultimate definition of a teammate, and this might just bring a tear to your eye.
Everyone in the neighborhood knew about Bobby. Bobby, the basketball boy, they called him. Bobby wanted to go pro someday, so he was always out in the driveway shooting hoops. But one day, his mom came out and told him,
"Hey, your wife wants you to take out the trash?"
His mom was visiting, and Bobby was a grown man. He had kind of missed his window. Plus, no one had ever seen him actually make a basket. But on the other hand, Bobby had heard how Geico could save him money on car insurance, so he switched and saved. So it was all good.
Breaking news outside the lines, just in from Grand Rapids. Zeke Upshaw, the Grand Rapids Drive, who had collapsed Saturday night in the G League game, has passed away. He died at 11:16 this morning. There had been no further updates on his condition since he did collapse on Saturday. He played collegiately 3 years at Illinois State, finished at Hofstra, and again, Zeke Upshaw of the Grand Rapids Drive, who collapsed Saturday, died this morning at just after 11 o'clock. Other issues today, there is racing in Virginia following a surprise snowstorm that dropped 2 inches of snow on the Martinsville Speedway this past weekend. Saturday's truck race series was halted by snow 23 laps in. Conditions had not improved enough to run the Cup Series race Sunday. This is NASCAR's first snow postponement in a quarter century.
There's nothing more special than the year 2002. At the beginning of the season, Coach K, who's a mastermind at psychology, wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page.